Hey Lily, thanks for being with me today.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks for having me.
Could you start by introducing yourself? Just say a little about where you're standing, where you're coming from.
Yeah, I'm in Chibuktuk right now. My name is Lily Falk. My pronouns are she, her. Um, I moved to Chibuktuk in 2019 to start a theater company with my main collaborator, Francisca Glenn. And I'm also the coordinator of the Perform program, which brings artists in singing, dance, and theater to schools across the province.
Can you say more about that Perform program? How does it work, and who employs you to do that work?
Yeah, so Perform is this really amazing program that's it's in its 27th year, and it's a joint project of Dance Nova Scotia, Theatre Nova Scotia, and the Choral Federation. And as the coordinator, I maintain a roster of about 40 plus artists who are like really high level, like super seasoned professionals who also are super passionate and have a lot of skills in teaching. And those artists travel all around the province and they offer workshops and performances to schools. Perform, we get $65,000 a year from the provincial government. And that is like all of our annual funding. It makes up about 97, 98% of our budget. And that is the way this program works. And so not only do we offer what I think is a fair wage for artists to teach in schools, but we also have ways of making sure rural schools have access to arts education. So the majority of our activities with Perform take place outside the HRM. And to make that happen, a lot of artists, not all artists obviously live in the HRM. We have artists all across the province. But what's really, I think, special to Perform is that our funding lets us send artists to any corner of the province where they're requested. And so that means that we can send an Acadian dance artist from Clare up to Cape Breton to do workshops. And that is like funded for the artists. Not only are they getting paid for their time in class, but they're also getting supported in terms of like mileage and accommodation. And when we do send people further afield, what we try to do is almost set it up like a tour. So to get two or three or four schools being able to access the program at once.
It sounds incredible. So what kinds of programming do these artists do in the schools themselves?
The programming is super broad, and what I think is really amazing about Perform is that it can be really responsive to schools and educators and what they're kind of dreaming up for their curriculum and what their students are also dreaming up. We've had, just 2 weeks ago over March break, we sent a group from Halifax Theatre for Young People who have been running this program called Youth Acts, which is all about providing youth with the skills to create their own work. So in theater, what we call like devised theater work. So when you're building stories from the ground up as an ensemble, um, that school recognized that their teens were really asking for more theater activities to happen in the school and that it wasn't being provided in the community. And so we were able to provide 3 days of a March break theater camp for youth that was free for youth to attend. And we had such amazing responses, both from, as an artist who was a perform artist before I was the coordinator, it's like it's an amazing experience getting to work with youth in schools. You get to see how youth that maybe are put in a certain box or maybe don't fit easily into a school system can really shine in the arts, and you see teachers reacting to their students in new ways because the arts just lets kids access different parts of themselves that aren't always valued in the school system. um, we also have we have an amazing collaboration going on right now between the playwright Lindsay Kite and the really amazing high school drama teacher in Antigonish, Jen Priddle. Lindsay is visiting multiple times over the course of the semester to support this giant group. Jen Priddle has never had a bigger drama class than like this year, I think. I think there's like nearly 30 or 30 plus students. They're all writing a play together, and Lindsay, as a professional, is supporting the playwriting through dramaturgy, which is like kind of like acting as an editor and someone who asks questions and encourages the writing. We also have really amazing culturally diverse programming that happens in schools, which is super important to me. We have Wantanera Drum and Dance, which is amazing West African drum group. We have Sangeeta Raju, who teaches Odissi classical Indian dance in schools. And I think what's so beautiful about offering culturally diverse activities, we also have like Acadian step dance. And I think it promotes belonging in schools and brings in cultural understanding from a really young age. You know, we have kids in primary, you know, and sometimes schools bring, you know, someone like Wantanera drum and dance back every single year. So it means you're getting a really deep appreciation and knowledge and understanding of potentially a culture that's different from your own, or maybe is your home culture, and means that maybe you feel a greater sense of belonging and ease with your classmates knowing a little bit more about you and your family.
That kind of cultural competency work, so many adults who are my age, for instance, like did not ever have access to anything like that until, I don't know, a decade ago, like in the workplace, if you were lucky enough to work somewhere that cared about. I used to work at Mindful magazine. I was the managing editor at Mindful, and as they might suggest, we were kind of concerned with the things that like support social cohesion, for instance, and reduce kind of pain points and friction between people. And so we did, a suite of cultural competency work that just helped us see our like natural internal biases and be able to kind of interrupt those things and like be open and learn and to be able to access that, like to know that children are able to access that through arts in their schools from the youngest age. For me, that just fills me with so much hope about the what I think of as like this the modern Mi'kma'ki, where I want to live and where like I think we deserve to live in a place where we can understand each other more easily and understand ourselves more easily and reduce conflict and reduce pain and like get to a place where we can work together to start to meet some of our big collective challenges, like poverty and the climate crisis and
Totally. Yeah, I think what I mean is I think can be really easily lost in some of these conversations around artists in schools, which I feel like has been brought up many times, and I'm certainly not the only person to bring this up, but that like maybe there's this sense that the arts are like some kind of luxury, or when an artist goes into a school, oh, that's like nice. How nice. Like all it is something nice, something extra, or that it's only good for kids who are already engaged in the arts or already artsy. Um, but to me, it's like exactly what you're saying. It's so much deeper than that. The arts is like a way of like it's so corny to say, but it is like truly something I believe in my whole chest. But like it accesses here, like it goes right in, and it lets us be more open with each other. It lets us access this like softer part of ourselves. Um, and I think schools right now, with their kind of crisis of well-being with our students, mental health crises, and also just like school culture crisis, um, the arts provides a huge lift. You know, Perform funds helps fund a after school drama program in Parsboro. There's two after school drama programs that are supported partially by Perform. And in the program that's for grades 3 to 6, when that program was started by Brooksfield Green, the perform artist that facilitates it, 75% of students in those grades signed up. Um,
what?
75% of students in grades 3 to 6 participate in this program. It's an after school, totally choice program. So you can see also children recognizing their own need to connect with the arts, what they understand the benefits both socially, feeling connected to their community, having fun, having a way to, you know, just like let go at the end of the day to connect with people in a different way. Um, yeah, and so I think like it's it's easy even for myself, I think, to be like it's nice that these programs exist, but actually the ripples are so much deeper. And I think, sorry, I'm speaking a lot, Stephanie, but
No, that's why I asked you here, Lily. Continue to speak.
um you know Galeforce, the company I run, we also run youth programming, and a parent of a youth in our program spoke so eloquently recently in a video about the changes she's seen in her daughter because of her participation in the arts. And I think and it just made me remember, like, what she expressed was that her daughter was nurtured in the arts in a way that made her feel confident to go back out into her community and volunteer at the Halifax Lancers and to volunteer walking dogs for seniors, because she gained the social and community skills of being in an ensemble based theater program, which is all about like working together, like trying to find like making connections with people that maybe you like wouldn't know otherwise, but you like are driven towards this goal of making a play together, and the really amazing feeling you get from getting to perform as a team. And she was able to take those skills and move them into totally other parts of her life and to feel confident to go back into her community. And I think like something I feel really deeply, and as a facilitator I always try to impart to students, is that art is ultimately a gift. We give it as artists, we give it as a gift. It's meant for other people. Of course, it comes back to us, but we do it so we can give it to someone else. And I think that that's like a net positive to me. It's been a net positive in my life. I see it in our youth gaining skills through these programs. So anyway, just wanted to share that because I just thought it was so clear.
That is so clear and it's so beautiful. I hadn't really thought through that connection of like the specificity of, oh, I participated in this program. It kind of introduced me to a new part of myself and it gave me a confidence and a platform to stand on where I can then contribute in these specific, meaningful ways in my community.
Yeah,
Like, isn't that what we're trying to do here is like facilitate, successive generations that have more and more and more kind of social and emotional skills and abilities in order to create this better society that we dream of.
totally. And I think like for me, my goal is not to make more artists. Like that will happen. I think
Yeah.
I don't need me to make more artists. What I am concerned with is making kids feel like they know how to share their voice and can share their voice, that they understand who they are, what they believe in, what they stand for. Um, and also like how to work with other people, how to work with people that maybe you find difficult, like those, and like to be a person for the rest of your life that understands that you have something to share, whether it's just you like write a poem for your friend on their birthday, or you draw them a card, or you like, just any, that artistic expression is just like a foundation for, I think, a good life. um and I think that's what's so disappointing, because Perform receives a really extremely modest amount of money. All the artists in schools receive such a modest amount, and we do so much. It's like such an effective use of money, um, that it feels just extra cruel that the government would disregard it.
It sure does. Can you talk about the work that's involved? Something that's really been playing on my mind for about a week. I think it was last Thursday. The writer Sarah Meehan gave a presentation at Public Bills, and like Public Bills was my new favorite TV show. I was in a
Same.
chokehold, basically, watched that all day. And Sarah's done a lot of writers in the schools. She's taught school and she has done writers in the schools. And so she talked a little bit about artists in the schools and also artists in communities, because that's another program that was cut to zero. And Artists in Communities is the one that Afterwards Festival, which I run, used to lift up a youth writing mentorship program for the last few years. Like just a really beautiful little program that pairs um, teens who want to be writers or who are interested in writing with professional writers for like a 6-week online mentorship. It's a really sweet program, and I don't know how we'll fund that going forward. But anyway, at Public Bills, PCMLA Brian Wong asked Sarah a question, and the question was basically, um, you know, MLA Wong said, well, I was a classroom teacher and lots of different kinds of people came into the classroom and gave presentations, tradespeople and professionals and artists. And And those were all great. And the artists were the only ones who got paid. And, you know, perhaps artists, if they really believe in that impact, they can continue to go into the schools and they can just go in for free. They can just volunteer their time. And uh, I mean, I have a feeling about why that's inappropriate and might not work. But I've never coordinated writers in the schools or perform or paints or these other programs that do put professional artists directly in classrooms. So can you talk a little bit about like let's start by talking about the infrastructure, like your work as a coordinator. What does that actually look like? Like,
Yeah, so we have over like I'm one person who coordinates over 40 artists and it's a part-time job. I'm also liaising with like just in the last 5 years we've reached 150 schools. So I'm like liaising with educators. I'm both in kind of the specificity of connecting, educators reaching out to us saying, this is I want some assistance with my choir. Can we have a clinician come in? And then I'm, suggesting the right person to them, or they're asking for Maureen Dunn to come in and do a Kodai workshop. And so I'm connecting those artists. I'm also just generally trying to communicate the benefits of the program, how the program works to schools, and also to prospective artists who are interested in joining the roster. Um, and then, you know, I also support artists in terms of, um, I think this question of like, can the artist do the work for free? I mean, no, basically no. We know this. Like I'm preaching to the choir here, I think, but I it's something I feel like I have been thinking a lot about in the last month of advocacy going on around the arts in this region is I think people don't realize how close to the bone even the most successful artists are living. And your artists, your favorite artist, your favorite singer, your favorite author, your favorite actor, one you see working all the time, getting national acclaim, people who you think, wow, they're having a really, really successful arts career are still, I mean, I can't speak for everyone, barely making it. And those folks are doing things like teaching and a ton of different gigs to make the rest of their life, maybe their life that's more focused on touring their music or writing books, make sense. And I think for me, like arts career and the arts in general is like a mirror of the natural world, and that it's like a symbiotic relationship that needs everything working together to make it happen. And like we live in a world with like racism and transphobia, and all those things impact those artists specifically in negative ways. And we need to work to raise up artists who are at a disadvantage and also to support the work that is also going on. And I think, I don't know if I'm making a lot of sense here, but perform for a number of artists, that has been a major part of their income for decades, that they've built their careers knowing this perform funding is there, and that is how they tour all over. Maritime Marionettes, they've been with perform for decades. They tour to schools. Schools bring them back year after year. They love these shows, and that is how they've gotten to tour a lot of their work across this province. Um, they're still going because perform exists, and schools are still able to access them because perform exists. Want and Air Drum and Dance are another group that's been working with perform for a long time. So many schools have benefited from their workshops. Um, for every artist, it's a tapestry, and to feel like the whole industry is getting taken out at the knees right now. Um, it's not like there's another source that just comes when
yeah.
one gets taken away, and especially with these broad-based cuts, we will lose people in this industry. Like myself as a young artist, I question all the time. Like, of course, everyone tells you when you're a young artist, like, you should only do it if you really, it's not an easy life. You should only do it if you can't do anything else. How many amazing teachers who I knew supported me 100% said these things to me. It's a vocation for me. It's deep. It's like kind of corny, but it's like a spiritual level of like devotion to children and youth and wanting to provide them with high level work, both for my own company and as my work with perform. Um, so no, I can't do this work for free, and neither can anyone else because no work happens for free. Um, yeah,
Yeah, all of that. Oh gosh, I have so many things I want to tell you about all of that. I mean, thinking about like those professionals, especially or tradespeople who are going into the school, they're they're likely earning a salary. They are not going in there for free. But
yeah,
artists don't have access to earn. I mean, I earn a salary out of the Afterwards Literary Festival, a thing I created with my festival partner, Ryan Turner. I do earn that salary. It is a little bit less than a living wage, what I earn. This conversation comes at a perfect time because yesterday I received my royalty statement from my publisher, Invisible, for my two novels, Homing and Fallsy Downsies. Fallsy Downsies, my second novel, came out in 2013. I was paid an advance of $1,000 back in 2013. And last spring, I earned out my advance finally. I sold enough copies of the book that I no longer owed my publisher money from that $1,000 that they paid me more than a decade ago. But I didn't earn very much. And so they don't write checks for less than $20. So I didn't get paid my tiny royalty last year. And I actually posted about that on social, which prompted like 5 people to buy my book. And so this year, I actually earned another $13. And my publisher has made a switch, and now they're paying royalties by e-transfer. So even if you only made $1, you can still get paid. So my original plan was that I was going to just leave my royalties to my niece in my will. That in perhaps 20 years after I'm dead and gone and there's $20 worth of royalties, that child could inherit that, and that would be my legacy. But anyway, I did get an e-transfer yesterday from my publisher for 24 bucks. So that's what I've earned uh, as a writer lately. And that, like, so then how do we make a living? Like, for me, I stitch it together. Obviously, my royalties, I'm going to buy a couple lattes with that at Cafe Lara this week, probably. But the way I make a living is I edit a few books for Nimbus every year. And so I earn a tiny amount of money doing that. I write a newsletter for a local business. And so I earn a tiny amount of money doing that. I yesterday was at Dal talking to a class there. I'll earn, I think, $300 for that. All of these things, these little bits and bobs that are how an artist makes a living. The revenue comes from a bunch of different places. I work many, many more than 40 hours a week in order to do these things. And that's like not even thinking about when I get a chance to actually write, like actually make my art.
mm-hmm.
That making a living as an artist, it rarely comes from the piece of art that you're making. It comes from these other things that you're able to do. And I think of it as an ecosystem, but I like thinking about it, as you said, as a tapestry because you cut these threads and the thing unravels. And what this government is doing is cutting these incredibly intrinsic threads that makes it unravel for people. And
Mm-hmm.
artists in the schools, artists having access to that funding and being able to count on that as part of like, okay, this is how I'm going to make April work. I know I've got 3 school visits and I'm going to get paid this amount and I can go and do this little bit of collaboration in this place where I'm going to the school or whatever. This is how we kind of put it together. But I'm also really struck by the amount of work that is required to make these visits happen. Like these teachers are not going to be individually calling maritime marionettes to book their time with them. These teachers are similarly hard up against it,
Yeah,
right?
I
Like
mean,
without somebody like you who's like, hello, yes, you'd like them? Great. Oh, hi. Oh, yes, I can get you them on this date. How does this work for you? Like making it all happen, all the contracts, paying the mileage, doing all that stuff, all that liaising without someone like you doing that work, it's not going to happen. And so if the funding isn't there for you to have a job, the
yeah,
artists can volunteer all they want, but there's the connection can't be made.
yeah, and I think I'm just gonna plug in my computer.
Yeah. Yeah, power to the people. Plug in your computer.
And I think like this, um, I'm sure parents listening, I mean, maybe, you know, kids classically come home from school and hear, like, you ask them what they did at school today, and maybe they didn't say any, they say, I don't remember, or I don't know.
Yeah.
But also, it's not like career day where an artist comes in and talks about what they did. It's like these artists are like tailoring to classrooms and to teachers and to curriculum, like bespoke events and bespoke programs. You know, many artists would perform like come week after week. We have an artist who's working with a CSFA school to make like a bespoke musical based on an Acadian folktale. And you know, this is like super skilled work. It's not just someone coming in and like sharing their you know, what their day-to-day life is or something like that. And that's great. That's great as well. But like all this to say is that it's really it takes a lot of effort and time. And I think, you know, it won't happen in the same way. And like those rural schools who I think I know from the feedback we get from them who are like, it's amazing. We don't have to, we couldn't afford to bus anywhere to bring our students to a performance. You know, the privatization of busing changed a lot of that. And even so, it was expensive beforehand. Like it definitely is very rarely happening now. Having a performance come right to a school, um, like provide so much access. You know, just this year we sent an artist to Spring Hill, and this is the first time in 19 years, at least what I was told, that there's a drama program happening in Spring Hill. And so from that, I was like, okay, like let's send an artist, like let's have this like galvanizing moment. And just the feedback we receive all the time from rural schools who feel so grateful that someone sees the need to for their students to have access, equitable access to the arts, um, and how and just the deep relationships that these artists build. You know, there's schools that request the same artists year after year for like over a decade because it's these beautiful long-term relationships and projects, and kids come to the principal asking, when's Drew and Robertson coming back, when's the puppet guy coming back, is he going to come back? And you know, principals who say to me all the time, you know, I'm not an artist, but I see the benefit, and my students are asking for it, and so I'm going to respond. And I think that's just so beautiful. These projects are significant investments for the school. You know, the schools also usually pay a portion for with Perform as well. We usually meet about 50-50 in terms of just the artist fees, but Perform pays 100% of travel. So it makes those rural schools be able to access these sort of experiences because we make that travel possible. But also every year we meet people's need at 100% as well, because we don't want any kid to not have access to this experience.
We're recording this on April 1st. So the fiscal year ended yesterday, and today is the start of a new fiscal year. So, you know, Perform should be getting a re-up of its funding, but that is not happening, I guess.
Yes, so we we are lucky that, you know, it's different for the different artists in schools programs. Some folks run on the provincial fiscal, we run on the school year, and so
Mm.
we luckily have a few more months. You know, I feel so deeply for my colleagues who are having to go back to schools and say we didn't receive the funding, and so we can't go forward on these visits. um, that's such a rupture of that relationship and a disruption of it. And um, for everyone, for the artists who are expecting that income, for the teachers who have planned their year meticulously and their time in class and how their, you know, programs work to include an artist visit. Luckily, Perform does have funding till the end of the year, um, but after that, it's totally uncertain for us.
So you would be expecting you wouldn't work at Perform during the summer. You would do other work in the summer.
Yeah, so um, we go on a hiatus. My hours go down to just 10 hours a week to finish up basically annual reporting. Um, and then we start back up again with the 20 hours a week in September. Um, and I think, like, you know, I mentioned this at my public bills, and you know, I'm comfortable to mention it here again. It's on the internet, but it's just like I mentioned in my public bill speech that like when I heard that the premier come out and say there's no further changes to the budget, um, I like called my doctor and I canceled my appointment to remove my IUD. Um, my husband and I had been planning to start trying for a child this spring, and we were speaking kind of this tapestry, and this, in my career so far, my like young, decade long career in working in the arts, this was the first time that I felt enough stability with a part-time job that, was getting annual funding and was guaranteed up until this moment, to start our family. And now it's really painful that that's in limbo. And the rest of my work with Galeforce, our theater company, is also in limbo because we don't know what funding opportunities will exist for us, going forward. And I just want to, I say that only because I know there are other people making similar calculations in every aspect of their personal life. Um, I think something I think a lot about as well is just like everybody has cultural needs. Everyone is connected to their culture and cultural activities, whether that be like sports or the arts or music or there's or storytelling. There's such a broad range, and that when we give those opportunities to kids, my theater company starts performances for as young as 2 years old. Mm. It allows them, I think it allows families and kids to recognize these own needs within themselves, to see the benefits, to grow up with the benefits. And it just like, it goes into the rest of the lifespan as people who appreciate and participate in the arts. And we know that there is like a huge amount of social and health benefits and economic benefits to being a participant in the arts. And I just want everyone to have access to that. I want my own future children to have access to it. We're like, Galeforce and Halifax Theatre for Young People are like the two companies in the whole Maritimes focused on making performances for young people. We don't have like a theater space that's dedicated to young people. Many other provinces have like multiple theaters and theater spaces dedicated to serving children and youth, like with professional performance. Anyway, these are like my more rambling philosophical thoughts about TYA, but I'm just like, it's like, it's just deeply concerning, and especially because the impacts are so clear.
Yeah, the impacts from that very personal level to that broader societal impact. Lily, I'm so grateful to you. I'm really grateful for your speech at Public Bills, which I thought was so courageous and so moving. I can't imagine being in that room and not changing my mind, you know?
Yeah, yeah, like I said, I feel like the positive impacts of the arts, what we take away too, it's like we won't know for a while all of the negative outcomes of what we've taken away.
Yeah, that's literally why I started having these conversations and recording them and sharing them, is because it feels like a 5 alarm fire to me that is actually going to be such a slow burn. Mm-hmm. And we won't, well, I mean, it's such a cliche. It's a beautiful artistic cliche, but we will not know what we had till it's gone. Mm-hmm. I mean, some of us know, but all of us will feel the lack when it's gone. And it's not easy to rebuild. Like, it's not a switch that can be flipped and then these structures get back in place. These relationships suddenly exist again. And this work is, easily turned back on. Like, this is generations of work, to put these programs in place, especially these artists in the schools programs in place. That was decades of work.
And Perform is one of the younger programs. There's programs who have been working. I think WITS has been around, I think, at least since the 80s. And this is my first year in the coordinator role. I took over from Pam Halstead, and I had been planning this year actually to ask for an increase, in funding, because every year we run out of money. Every year we receive more requests for activities with Perform than we have funding for. Yeah. So if we're not already meeting the need and we're taking it away completely, it just, yeah, it's just cruel.
Thank you so much for speaking with me and helping me understand that network that's at work there, in that work that you were doing and that you'll do until the end of the school year, and that I hope somehow you'll get to do again in September.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. I really appreciate it.